Oh my God. You want to move that closer?
How's that? That's better? Okay. All right, we're all set up and ready to go? Okay. Welcome everybody to a press conference. We are about to begin some important discussions, so we wanted to give space for our leaders to address the media and just share their thoughts going into this Bill C-5 summit meeting. We are going to start with Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, and then I'll announce the names of the chiefs as we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyra Wilson, Grand Chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. I just want to thank you all for being here today and supporting our leadership. We have 2 days of important discussions. Right now we are talking about Bill C-5 and what does that mean for Canada. And right now, as First Nations, we stand here united in the conversations that are so very important when it comes to our lands and resources as First Nations. And so when we think about the next 2 days, the message to Canada is that, of course, consultation, consent, involvement is the key message here when we talk about the lands and resources and the major project discussions that are going to be taking place. And so this is not consultation. This is a first meeting of many. That is the expectation. And so Canada must recognize that we are the first peoples of this land. We have inherent rights, and that this discussion will be led by us, and that we have many messages from many nations from across this country, and that the priority is that Canada needs to listen to our leadership. They need to listen to our nations when it comes to this discussion. And so I look forward to listening to our leadership from across the country when it comes to Bill C-5 and what does that mean for major projects within our lands and our territories. So I just want to say thank you, miigwech, to all the leadership that is here today. I appreciate everyone that is supporting the discussion, and I look forward to the next 2 days in having a conversation with Canada about major projects within this country. Miigwech.
Thank you, Grand Chief. Next, we have Grand Chief Garrison Settee from the Manitoba Keewatin Maganak.
Tanse, nilute mag-iti sa nagluwa gumaga na diskat na Gatineau. I come here with the leadership for chiefs from Manitoba, and we come here as sovereign nations to address a matter that has national implications and potentially international implications. But basically, it is an issue of who we are and the rights that we have as Indigenous people. Our rights that were given to us predate Confederation, predate the Constitution of Canada, and it predates the European Compact. And those rights are very important to our people. And also the ability to be self-determining, ability to be sovereign nations is our inherent right. The ability to preserve our language and our culture and identity is very critical. And a lot of policies and regimes have been designed to try to eliminate that. But that has never happened because we're still here, and we will always be here. And we will always be here to defend the rights of our people and our nations. And mostly because we represent the children that are not born yet. Whatever decisions are made will impact them and their rights. So we want to make sure that we build an economy that will sustain our people going forward. So this process that is happening right now has watered down the duty to consult and accommodate, and they've tried to eliminate the free, prior, and informed consent. But this is not acceptable, and we're here to tell the Government of Canada and the Prime Minister that you cannot act without us being involved. I've experienced a lot of devastation in our lands and territories through different hydroelectric projects in my nation. And also mining has left our people without hunting territories. But now there's a paradigm shift that's happening. There's things that have changed. 40 years ago, we didn't have our own lawyers, and 40 years ago, we didn't have educated leaders. But now we have leaders that are able to speak for themselves, that know their rights, that know legislation, that know about the government of Canada and how it operates. And we are just a state. Nothing can happen without the inclusion of the Indigenous people. If there's any revenue coming from our nations, it will have to go to First Nation people as well. No longer we will allow projects to go and leave our people in poverty. No more, no more, no more. I would say.
Thank you, Grand Chief Settee. Next, we have AFN Regional Chief Willie Moore.
Good afternoon, everybody. Namaskar, greetings to all. I'd like to acknowledge that we are here in the lands of the Algonquin Nation. And a message to Prime Minister Carney. We're here, as nations from the Manitoba region, for the critical discussion that is needed and hasn't taken place yet. The recognition of our rights, the respect that we deserve, and the cooperation that is needed from your government. If we want to move forward, there can be a strong economy without the inclusion of the First Nation people. First and foremost, Prime Minister Carney, you need to meet with our chiefs. You need to meet with our nations. You give that same respect to the premiers. You give that same respect to our chiefs. We are the rights holders. Our nations are the rights holders. There can't be one economy without the first peoples of this land. So to the investors, to the countries that need our critical minerals, to the countries that need our resources, the door is always open to come talk to our nations. Because at the end of the day, there's not going to be no development without the inclusion and engagement of our nations and our people. We signed a treaty with Canada long before there was any type of policy or legislation. Our treaties come first and foremost, and they have to be recognized. They have to be honored. Prime Minister Carney, your duty is to honor those treaties. So we are here at the Manitoba AFN region, our regional office. We're here to support our leadership, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. So thank you, son.
Thank you, Regional Chief. Next, we have Chief Angela Levasseur from Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation.
Nancy, good afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Chief Angela Levasseur. I am the first female to be elected Chief of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I'm very honored to be speaking from the heart of Treaty 5 territory. We were promised a treaty relationship based on peace, mutual respect, and the sharing of this land and its resources. Instead, we are watching as Canada enacts new legislation to fast-track development on our territories, while the promises made to us over a century ago remain broken. Let me say this plainly. Bill C-5 violates the spirit and intent of our treaties. Bill C-5 gives the federal government sweeping powers to push through so-called projects of national interest, such as pipelines, ports, and transmission lines, without free, prior, and informed consent. Let's be clear. This is not UNDRIP. This is not consent. This is a violation of international law. How can Canada claim to respect our rights while making decisions about our land and our resources without us? We are not against development, but we will not stand for development without us. While Canada races to build its economy on our backs, we are still waiting for our treaty land entitlement, waiting for our Northern Flood Agreement lands, waiting for implementation of a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision regarding funding for our children and our families that fall under Jordan's Principle. Our nations are still living in abject poverty while Canada continues to reap the benefits of hydro, forestry, and mining projects from our lands. This is not reconciliation. This is exploitation. We want what was promised. We want what's owed. And we want a fair share of the wealth taken from our territories. Water is life. Not just for First Nations people, for every human being that lives on this planet. Water is life. You can't drink oil and you can't breathe smoke. If the recent wildfire devastation across our country that's been going on for years and years and years is not a clear indication of that, I don't know what is. They're not just natural disasters. These wildfires are man-made crises, the result of decades and decades of reckless industrial development and total and utter disrespect for our land. Now, today, and into the future, we are all living with the consequences. Once again, I want to emphasize, all of us, all humans, these are not solely First Nations issues. And I want our allies and all Canadians to acknowledge that and to understand it. As Robert Spence of Tatasqueya Cree Nation has said time and time again, what we do to the land, we do to ourselves. We need to protect what is left, because once our water is gone, it's gone forever. The final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Two-Spirit relatives, and girls made this abundantly clear. Resource development is directly linked to increased violence against First Nations women, girls, and Two-Spirit relatives. Industries bring in so-called man camps, which are temporary work camps filled with transients, mostly non-First Nations, cisgendered male workers. These camps have been associated with spikes in sexual violence, drug trafficking, and exploitation. Our own nations have seen the impacts of hydro projects. A CBC investigation reported that at least 9 cases of sexual assault occurred at the Kiosk Dam site alone. 9 cases of sexual assault against our First Nations women. Hydroelectric development has caused devastating cultural, environmental, economic, and gendered harm to First Nations. And these are not isolated incidents. They are part of a broader pattern of systemic failure. In terms of calls to action, this is what needs to happen now. Not next year, not after another study has been done and shelved, but right now. Number 1, settle all treaty land entitlement and Northern Flood Agreement claims. No more delays. Number 2, share royalties and revenues with First Nations equitably and directly. Number 3, establish First Nations-led treaty review boards to enforce treaty implementation. Number 4, legally protect our water in perpetuity. Water is not just a resource, it's our relative. Replace outdated consultation with real binding consent. Immediate action on Call for Justice 13.4. We are calling for a First Nations-led public inquiry, one that is co-developed, co-drafted, and grounded in First Nations knowledge and leadership. These are not asks, these are minimum requirements to honor the treaties. In closing, we are not passive recipients of policy. We are sovereign nations with sacred responsibilities to the land, to the water, and to our future generations. It is high time to honor the treaties, not with photo ops, not with one-day summits or even two-day summits, but with action, land, and real justice. Because if Canada continues down this path of fast-track colonial development, the balance will be lost. And when that happens, we all lose. We are strong, we are united, and we are not going anywhere. Ego say,
Thank you, Chief Lagasser. Next, we have Chief Derek Nepenak from Anishinaabe Anishinaabe.
For the opportunity to stand here with my colleagues in leadership to raise some important conversations over the next couple of days that we're here. I'm Derek Nepenak, as introduced. I'm the chief of the Manitoba Anishinaabe. There's about 6,000 of us Ojibways. We're situated in a place called Manitoba on the west shore of Lake Winnipeg-Ozas. If you think that the two-day meeting that we're here for marks the full extent of engagement, then you have a right to be skeptical. We see this really as an opportunity to start the conversation. This is by no means the end of it. We're just getting things started now. These discussions have to temper the federal government's assumptions of authority over lands and resources. And what I mean by that is that we come here as treaty people. The Manitoba Anishinaabe are Treaty 4 and Treaty 2 families. And let me tell you something. When we agreed to treaty, we did not give the land away, contrary to popular history and what people have been taught for too many generations. We gave the land away. We did not give the land away. We retained that. We retained title in the land. And that's where one of the biggest challenges that we have to face right now comes to surface. Because proponents from all around the world want to come to our territory and they want to take from us. But if we have unceded title, which we believe exists in the treaty agreement, then where are these people? Why aren't they engaging with us? Why do we have to rely on the Crown's designate, the federal or provincial government, to tell us what to do in our territory? It's backwards right now. And that's the big message that we need to bring to everybody that wants to come here from around the world and work their resources, whether that be in the land or in the water. You've got to come to us first, because we have unceded title, even when we have treaty. This whole idea that we cede, release, surrender land, that has to be part of yesterday's lies. We're moving forward together. We're seeking truth and reconciliation. We're trying to do these things respectfully, and that's why we're here to engage with the Prime Minister. Maybe the Prime Minister needs to hear us talk about what treaty really means to our families and what this is all about. Bill C-5 and I position myself in this conversation as an ally of the Crown. And I recognize that both provincial and federal government have obligations to honor the Crown. And in honoring the Crown, they have to create systems and mechanisms for engagement with me as their ally, my family, my community, and all of us under treaty. So it's not our law. So I'm not here to complain about how Canada fast-tracked their law through Parliament, because that happened yesterday. I'm here to start talking about how are we going to rectify this on a going forward basis. How are they going to show respect to my family, my community, and us Anishinaabe in our territory when they want to come and actually engage in what has to be a very, very extensive consultation. A consultation that could actually take us to the point where we say, no, we do not consent to what you're trying to sell us here. We may get to that point. And we're not there yet today. This is a learning experience for all of us. This is a very unique time. We're not here to rubber stamp federal legislation, and we're not here to veto federal legislation. Our role is more profound. Our role is to speak of our laws and bring them into this space, to remind Canada that our consent must be earned, not assumed. This country likes to call meetings like this consultation. But if this is to be called consultation, then we have to hold this government to a very, very high standard. Every word we speak has to reflect our knowledge base, our responsibility, and the covenants, the treaty covenants that we've inherited. And as my colleague, Chief Levasseur, had said, there's nothing more important, no resource more important to us than the water. The water has to be protected at all costs, at all costs. And that message has to be reiterated time and time again. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Neepanek. Next, we will have Chief Gordon Blue Sky from Broken Head Ojibwe Nation.
Great to everybody, and of course, it's always tough following a crew like Chief Levasseur and Chief Neepanek. I'd like to recognize those two very powerful leaders in our region, and people that I look up to as well. So I really do appreciate everybody here today, listening to our concerns as we move into this meeting here with the Prime Minister of Canada. One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I've been being contacted by a number of ministers, people across Canada as to how we feel about what's going on here over the next couple of days, and about the One Canadian Economy Act. And I'm always reminded by our elders and of course our ancestors and the work that I do in terms of sitting with my bundle and doing those prayers, is that I'm always reminded of the fact that we were once wealthy, healthy, and self-sustaining people with our own rules, our own laws, our own regulations as it related to trade and commerce. Canada was created, and still till today, being supported by our old trade routes. Our resources that we once traded and went on throughout the whole world here, and I want to remind everyone of that, is that Canada once was a place where we did trade with Scotland, England, Britain, all around the world, in France, where we had trade routes that are still used today. The things that I've been hearing about potential projects of national interest across this country, and especially in our prairie regions, what they call them today, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, we're very integral to some of these projects. And I think the thing that everybody has to understand is, especially here in our Manitoba, is that our territory was once moving goods from the inland to the Hudson Bay for hundreds of years. This isn't something new. Economy isn't something new to our First Nations. What has happened, though, over the past 100 years is that we've been suppressed, oppressed. We now live in the ruins of residential schools, our stolen generations. Our people are living continually traumatized by that history. And we struggle as First Nation leadership here to try to find our path and our way through this Canadian system and end the economy. So I find it very difficult for me to stand here and not recognize the past when looking forward to the future when it comes to Canada and Prime Minister Carney's agenda with our resources. You know, we had a number of projects that were coming through, and our First Nations were standing there, again, waiting to hear and waiting to have these consultations for a lot of years, and we still haven't been able to come to the table and formally be a part of those things. I think the one thing that I feel, a message that I feel in terms of the treaty nations that I stand here with today, is that we still receive, and my treaty days are happening here in the beginning of August, we still receive $5 and representative of a treaty annuity in terms of our relationship. At that time, when we first started receiving that $5 payment, that represented an annual livelihood, a livelihood that we could participate in the economy, we can hunt, trap, and participate with having our furs going into the world market. Back then, in the 1800s, that was the world's economy at the time. Well, today we live in 2025, and we need, in terms of treaty implementation, we need our treaty annuities that is given to every one of our members to reflect the economy, the resources that are being extracted, the land use that's happening within our territories. And that's what I believe that we need to push for today, is true treaty implementations, not just for our governments, not just for our reservations, but also for our members to understand what their relationship was and what they supported in 1871. So I'd like to just say miigwech and thank you everybody here for coming out, but we're going to go in here, we're not going in here asking or putting anything on the table. What I'd like to hear from Canada is what they're proposing. What they're proposing to our nations, what they're proposing in terms of treaty implementation. How is this not going to infringe on that treaty rights that we have as people from the prairie provinces, but also at the same time ensuring that the economy is, and the focus of the bill is to rebuild what we once had, a healthy, wealthy, and a self-sustaining people before they came here and tried to dismantle us. So I'd like to just say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Blue Sky. Next, we have Chief David Monias from Pimicikamak Cree Nation.
Greetings everybody. Greet everybody that's here, all the chiefs and women, family, friends, citizens, from wherever you are. You know, it's hard to kind of be the last person to speak when they have really powerful speakers that are out there. And I was reminded, what am I going to say if I go up there to speak? Well, I'm here to speak to Prime Minister. I'm probably not going to have the chance to ask him questions with the amount of time that we're going to be given for all the chiefs. I mean, the Grand Chiefs, National Chiefs are going to be having those times. But I can give you my answer now. The answer is no. No, I don't support Bill C-5. Oh, that's right. You didn't ask me if I support it or not. There was no consultation. There's no accommodation. There was no free, prior, and informed consent. How can I agree to something that a person has not even come to sit on my table to talk to me and say, listen, we want one economy, and it's going to include you, and it's going to prosper your people. Would I have trusted him? Probably not. Reason why I said that, we have treaties. That was signed. That was a one economy agreement between First Nations, the Crown. Was that implemented? No. And again, in 1977, they came to our table, Canada, Manitoba, Manitoba Hydro, and they said, one economy for North Manitoba. The First Nations that were included in there. It's going to eradicate mass poverty. It's going to eradicate mass unemployment. That was 48 years ago. Did that happen? No. Because it's all one-sided. So how am I supposed to believe that this thing, Bill C-5, and all the things that it's going to come with the development, is going to benefit my First Nations, my people? I almost didn't come here today because my people are being evacuated from our community, from the forest fires. That came from the climate change because of all the industries, all the businesses have destroyed our lands, have destroyed our climate. It's changing, and we're paying the price for it. Our lands are being destroyed. Our people are being uprooted and displaced. And we're not benefiting from it. But the business people, yes, they will benefit from it. Will they share resources? Probably not. Again, I don't mean to be negative. It's just where I live. That's what I'm faced with every day. I'm fighting every day for my people. Fighting every day for my waters to be clean. Fighting every day for my land to be prosperous and so forth. And trying to save whatever's left over for our future generations. Prime Minister Mark Carney, the treaties are not obstacles, they're opportunities. They're existing relationships that are there to be seen as a bridge to true prosperity for all of us. For all of us. For our future generations. Hey, hey.
All right, so we have one last speaker, and then our chiefs have to head in. So unfortunately, we won't have a question period, but we will have time for media to hear chiefs' reactions tomorrow at 4:30. So our final speaker is proxy for Lake Manitoba First Nation, Carl Zednik.
Chimigwich, Anin, Tanze, Aho. Thank you for all the chiefs behind us, that are paving a path forward for our future generations. I want to recognize them first and foremost, including my own leader that can't be here today that has asked me to be proxy chief for Lake Manitoba First Nation. While we recognize BSIL C-5 as a modern-day NRTA transfer act in terms of the way government has tried to pass a bill without any consultation or engagement, we recognize also the importance of how we need future accommodation measures and, most importantly, duty to consult and duty for consent on this bill. The formal recognition of Indigenous rights and federal government's commitment to uphold these policies and practices need to be firm. The establishment of frameworks or mechanisms for consulting our people on not only legislative and administrative decisions that impact our rights. We need clarification of government responsibilities to ensure meaningful and ongoing engagement rather than one-time or perfunctory consultation. We need provisions to support capacity building with Indigenous communities to engage effectively in these consultation processes. So while we recognize BSIL 5 as a signal to commitment at the legislative level to embed the duty to consult within federal law, we need to move beyond ad hoc policy approaches. One-time meetings don't work for us, where just 2 days we're going to sit and talk amongst over 600 First Nations to find out what's important to us. That doesn't work anymore. I'm going to outline 4 very important points that are going to help define what we think in terms of Lake Manitoba, Fairford, Lake St. Martin, Little Saskatchewan, Dauphin River, Jackhead, and Peguis First Nations think in terms of what we've identified as important to them in terms of a consultation approach. This recurring theme in both jurisprudence and policy is the need for consultation to be meaningful. This means more than simplifying notifying us like we are today, that Indigenous communities of impending decisions. We require timely disclosure of all relevant information in a form accessible to Indigenous participants, even in their own languages. We need sufficient opportunity for Indigenous peoples to assess, understand, respond to these proposed mechanisms and proposed bills. We also need a willingness on the part of the Crown to accommodate these Indigenous concerns of ours, where appropriate, including the possible modifications to the projects or decisions that are outlined once we've identified what needs to change or needs to be accommodated. We also recognize the unique cultural, spiritual, and legal perspectives that inform Indigenous views of land and resource use. In order for BC5 to be effective, these must be clearly articulated in their elements and to provide mechanisms for Indigenous communities to hold government accountable for failures when they do occur. The challenges to effective consultation, and despite legal advancements and significant barriers that persist, we need when we recognize there are resource limitations. Many of our communities lack the financial and human resources to fully participate in these complex consultation processes, especially when multiple projects or policies are under consideration. Also, there's an important note of power imbalance. The Crown retains ultimate decision-making authority, which can undermine the spirit of partnership and co-management that consultation implies. We also recognize there's a lack of clarity, that vague legislative language about what constitutes adequate consultation and what can lead to inconsistent practices across federal departments and agencies, including provincially. Sometimes we undergo a consultation fatigue, where repeated overlapping consultations on various issues can overwhelm our people and our governance structures and also erode trust in this process. In closing, what we need capacity building, funding, training, and technical support so that government can empower us to participate fully and effective in these consultations. We also need independent oversight establishing independent bodies to monitor the consultation processes, which will help ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability. We also need co-development of policy, moving towards true co-development of legislation and policy in partnership with Indigenous governments, which would fulfill both the letter and the spirit of reconciliation. And lastly, we need integration with UNDRIP, because right now with UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, we already know what our rights are. We've been here since time immemorial, through our ancestors, through their customs, through their practices, and through the language and the land that we live off. So we need not only this free, prior informed consent that our brothers and sisters have already shared, my chiefs here, but also to strengthen Canadian law and practice. And without us, this thing's not going to happen. Chi-miigwech.
And that concludes our press conference for today. Thank you everyone for coming. Our chiefs have to rush now to get into their meetings. So, someone was asking for a photo, but I believe we are on to the wire, so our chiefs unfortunately have to go. As I said, there will be an opportunity tomorrow with our chiefs again, and likely with additional chiefs from other regions who will join us. So thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful day.
Hi. We're from Radio-Canada.